Welcome to today's lecture, Spears Spastic Special Social Skills Seminar. As you can tell, I like alliteration. What will you learn today? Today, you'll learn social skills. Nice. Nice and obvious. There's a saying that wise men learn from the mistakes of others. But some mistakes you must learn yourself. The idea is that you could read all of the books that you want. You could read 1,000 books, How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's a great start. You can read all of these books, and yet, without actually going into the field and practicing, you won't ever be able to put those ideas, let's say, you won't be able to put those ideas into something that's tangible, something that you can internalize inside. What do I mean by that? Let's say I read a book on how to make steel in a furnace. Melt the steel, forge it, shape it, hammer it, slap it, whatever. I could read all of the books, I could watch all of the videos, but I won't actually know what it's like to slap that piece of steel with a hammer myself. That's the key difference. At the end of the day, at the end of this seminar, this lecture, you still have to put in the hard work. You still have to go out and do the things. But hopefully by the end of this lecture, following this all the way through, you will be happier. Humans are social creatures. We have evolved to grow, to thrive in tribes. And so we want the acceptance of our tribe. We want to eventually, hopefully, lead our tribe. Just double checking, everyone. Quickly comment something, say 1, 2, 3, if you can still hear me well. If the audio is clear, if the video is clear. Otherwise, I might need to tweak some settings. So the audio is clear. Nice. Sweet. All right. First and foremost, step 0, we will have to focus on what I will call mindset. Now, we can go as a lone wolf, right? You've probably heard that phrase, oh, I'm the lone wolf, I'm the alpha. I can go whatever I want. I can go wherever I want. I can do whatever I want. I'm the lone wolf. I'm the alpha. Could be a little bit louder. Let's see. Hopefully that's a bit better. Change my mic settings. Give me a second. Hopefully that'll be a bit better. Okay, we can go as the lone wolf. The lone wolf does everything by himself. He relies on no other people. And for a lot of things, that's amazing. It's great that we can go by ourselves. We don't have to rely on others because, as we know, other people can be extremely unreliable. When you desperately need someone to do something for you, they can flake at the very last moment. Even if it's for something that's very trivial. Like, hey, bro, can I get a lift to the station? Can you drive me to the station, please? Oh yeah, sure, no worries. And then the last moment, oh, sorry, I forgot. That's unreliable. Do things yourself. But there's if I remember correctly, it's an African saying. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. So I have been on both sides. I've tried doing everything alone. I've tried going and being this super duper social, I won't call it a social butterfly, but let's say in a not so nice way, a social retard. Running around, hey bro, can I be social with you? Can I be your friend? Can I do things with you? Can I be your friend? Let's do things together. I've been on both ends. And so you'll see me make the transformation from someone who was incredibly lonely a decade ago. And now I feel incredibly social, being able to seamlessly navigate any social interaction, whether it's a job interview, whether it's hitting on girls, even though I've got a girlfriend now, 5 years, going strong, or it's just talking to one of your bros, or maybe at the gym or at the club, at the bar, someone barges into you. You will be able to know how to handle all of those different social interactions because each one of those requires you to be calibrated a bit differently. Now, next, who am I? As I already said, I am someone who has made that transformation himself. I went from what I call the social punching bag to someone who's now a social butterfly. I've been a tutor and a coach for a decade, and that means I see a lot of classroom interactions from kids as young as, let's do some quick math, year 3, so they'll be about 8 years old, from kids as young as 8 to adult students in university classrooms. I see, from my vantage point as the teacher, I see all of those different social interactions. Now, of course, as we grow up, depending on how old you currently are, you could be 8, you could be 28. I'm 27 myself right now. As we get older, we learn how to behave ourselves, so to speak. We know that it's unacceptable to slap someone, to hit someone. We know that it's unacceptable to call someone fat and ugly to their face, but not kids. Kids, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 8-year-old, 10-year-old, they don't have that filter in place. Or they might, but it's not a strong filter. So, in those scenarios, it becomes very raw, very clear who has the higher standing in the social hierarchy. Who is the person calling the shots? Even though in their 5-year-old minds, in their 10-year-old minds, they're not thinking, yeah, I'm the alpha, you're the beta. They're not thinking in those terms. They're just thinking, well, really, they're not thinking at all. They're just behaving the way that they instinctually want to behave. Nobody likes to be at the bottom of the punching. Excuse me. Let me get a drink. Nobody likes to be at the bottom. But I was at the bottom. Now, some of you have already heard of this story before. Some of you have heard my bullying story before, and I've made a video about this. Doesn't get much easier. I've repeated this story. I've told this story to many people, hundreds, if not thousands of people at this point. And yet every time I speak about it, even thinking about it, you can probably tell. I don't know if you can tell, but I am sweating a lot just thinking about this because it has a lasting and profound impact on me. Sorry, this time I won't cry. So, when I was born, I'm in Australia right now, born in Australia, but when I was born, pretty much as soon as they could, my parents shipped me off to live with my grandparents. And grandparents were in China, so I grew up learning lots of Chinese, learning the culture, the Chinese culture, how to behave, respect your elders. That was a big theme. And my grandma, being a very devout Buddhist, she always taught me, people will see the value in you. People will see your value. Just give them time. If they want to hit you, if they slap you, let them. They will be your friend if you are nice to them. Now, 4-year-old me, 5-year-old me, he internalized that. It's like, I need to be nice to everyone. I need to just be nice. So I thought that was the key. The key to friendship is just to be nice. Problem solved. Except, as you can imagine, that's not what happened. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. Pretty much right from the get-go. Now, I have to preface this that my primary school where I started, it was predominantly white. And very clearly you can see I'm Asian. There were maybe 3 or 4 other Asian kids. Yeah, about 3 or 4 other Asian kids. Everyone else was white. And coming from China to Australia, I did not speak any English at all. So I would have been that annoying kid telling everyone, asking all of the other Chinese kids, hey, what did the teacher say? Hey, what did that kid say? Hey, what did they say? And very quickly, as you can imagine, that became very, very annoying. Now, from a 5-year-old's perspective, I didn't know what I was doing wrong. But now, from an adult perspective, I could tell I was being annoying. Not of my own fault, really, but I was being annoying. And so, very quickly, that made me an outcast. Meaning, during lunchtime or recess, we would play soccer, play handball, play all these games, and the other kids would exclude me deliberately. As you can imagine, it was very hurtful. I didn't know why. Now, I remember what my grandma said, just be nice. Just be nice to them and they'll realize what a great friend you are and they'll be nice to you too. So what I did was, every time the soccer ball got kicked out of field, went to some place that we're not meant to be, out of bounds as we said, I would go and get it for them. I would risk being in trouble with the teachers and I would go get the ball for them. I'm good at math. So a lot of times during class, I would offer kids, hey, let me help you do your homework. Let me help you. I would try to offer as much value as I can. And we'll talk about value later. But I would try to offer my value by shoving it down their throat. I didn't care if they wanted it or not. I just went, here's my value, take it, please. And then, as you can imagine, that did not go very well. That made me further and further, more and more outcast. To the point that I internalized my belief that I was a designated social punching bag. I'm going to refer to that a lot. I was the social punching bag. Basically, in any interaction, if someone needed someone to blame or someone to make fun of, someone needed to make a joke, it all fell on my head. It all became me because I lacked the social skills to navigate that particular interaction. I lacked the understanding to be able to defend myself. And so kindergarten moved to year 1 to year 4, year 5, year 6. I changed schools twice, not because of the bullying, but because I moved from regular school to what we call OC, so opportunity class, basically class for smart kids. And as you can imagine, everyone else there was also a smart kid. And smart meant they knew how to get away with breaking the rules. The bullying then was not physical. If anything, I was the physical one, and that's what got me into a lot of trouble. Instead, a lot of their bullying was verbal. It was in ways that could not be traced and did not leave a visible mark, such as exclusion, such as put down, bullying, verbal harassment, such as misplacing my things. But you can't prove that. So I got into all that trouble whenever I tried to fight back. I'd push for them, I would hit them, I would punch them. Not all the time. In fact, I very, very rarely would get violent because my parents were busy. And so every time, we have like a zero tolerance policy. So every time I would get anything that's remotely violent, that includes kicking someone's bag. Not the person, but the bag. How fucked up is that? I would kick someone's bag and that would be classified as a violent act. And then my parents would be called. I would get a verbal beat down at home. Overall, it just wasn't a nice experience. So then what changed? How did I go from a social punching bag to a social butterfly? What changed was my mental health. And so that's going to be our first step. I call it step 0. It's not even the first step. It's without a strong foundation, without a base, you can't build a house. Imagine trying to build a house on a lake or on mud or on sand. Give it a few minutes, that house would completely crumble. Trying to develop social skills without a strong mental foundation is basically the same thing. You need strong mental health. So, how do we get strong mental health? Well, really, what does it refer to? The first thing is self-esteem. From my story, you could probably tell I had very, very shit self-esteem. And in fact, there were many nights, and I remember this very clearly, distinctly, when I was around year 9, year 10, there was this kid called, well, actually a lot of kids, so it's not entirely fair to single him out in this example, but his name was Jeffrey. Literally, his name was Jeffrey. Right? We make these jokes about Jeffrey and Adonis. He was a literal Jeffrey. He made my life hell. For the life of me, I can't remember what started it all. But basically, he decided I was a great target. I was someone to pick on. And his social skills weren't amazing either, so he was also a violent kid. But for whatever reason, he still ranked above me in terms of the social hierarchy. And for many, many nights, I would cry myself to sleep. I would dream, I would envision things. I would just dream of these ways that I could end someone's life. My life and his life. I would dream of... So glad I didn't act upon any of this, because otherwise I'd be telling the story from jail. But I would imagine, like bringing a knife in my bag, and then when no one was looking, or when even in front of a big crowd, I would just imagine shoving that knife through his throat. I had some really, really dark and graphic thoughts. And at the same time, I also had very dark and graphic thoughts about just ending it all, because I wanted to end in one way or another. Meaning, if I ended my own life, everything would come to an end. And for that reason, because I went through that dark phase of my life, and that's not the only dark phase, but like specifically that one, that's why I'm such a huge advocate of mental health. Right? I've been giving a lot of speeches, a lot of talks, both in schools, or rather in a classroom environment, as well as in corporate environments, right? In my day job, I'm 27 now, I've been working for roughly 5 years off the top of my head. I've been giving talks, or at least suggestions, about mental health, the importance of mental health. If you guys are in Australia, you might have seen the news just yesterday or the day before. Some poor woman working for EY, she felt compelled on a Friday night. She goes out, has drinks with her friends, has drinks with her colleagues, and she felt compelled on a Friday night to go back and do more work. And for whatever reason, that night she thought, I had enough. So she climbed up to the balcony, to the patio, and she jumped off. Some poor construction worker had to find her remains, just like bloody splattered all over the damn place. Mental health is extremely, extremely, extremely important. I can't emphasize this enough. I can't exaggerate this enough. Mental health, like having a strong view of yourself, strong understanding of who you are as a person and how you fit in with everyone, and the fact that you are not an absolute piece of shit like I believe that I was for a long time. It is super important. Now, all of that depressing stuff aside, let's move on. Sharpen the axe. What do I mean by that? You guys have probably heard that story, or a quote, or a saying that if someone has 10 hours to cut down a tree, they would take 9 hours, or they should take 9 hours to sharpen the axe, and that final hour to actually chop down the tree. 9 hours of preparation, 1 hour of actual execution. In the same way, 9 hours of preparation here is preparing your mental health, making sure that you understand that no matter the outcome, right, whether it's a job interview, whether it's approaching a cute girl, whether it's meeting someone in the gym or at a bar or at a club or just walking down the street, whatever the interaction, understand that no matter the actual outcome, doesn't matter what the actual outcome of the interaction is, you as a person are not affected. Meaning, if a girl rejects you, that doesn't make you less of a person. On the flip side as well though, if a girl does accept you, if the girl is very warm towards your advances, that doesn't necessarily make you a better person either. It's just that you, fundamentally as a person, you don't change that quickly from 1 minute to the next. That's what I need to emphasize. Okay, my bullying story. I already went through that. I jumped the gun. But now, the fourth point, chicken or the egg. What do I mean by that? Now, social skills. Actually, before I talk about that, let's take a step back and look at self-improvement. Or rather, what is self-improvement? A lot of people, especially young kids, seem to have this understanding, well, I say understanding, but they seem to have this perception, this thought, that self-improvement is in lots and lots of independent silos. Oh, going to the gym, that's the fitness silo. Social skills, oh, that's the social skills silo. They think that these are like for example, if you played RuneScape, that these are separate skills that you level up independently of each other. That's not actually the case. Self-improvement is not individual silos, it's one whole encapsulating umbrella that captures everything under it. Now, of course, you can focus on your fitness, you can focus on your social skills. But, and this is what I mean by the chicken or the egg, do you have poor mental health, as I did, because of a lack of social skills? Or is it that I lacked social skills because of my poor mental health? Do you see how that feeds into itself? I believe that I am unworthy of love. I believe that I deserve to be a social punching bag. And so that means I will act that way. And people will reinforce that belief, leading to worsening mental health, further reinforcing my belief that I'm supposed to be a social punching bag. And that cycle continues. On the flip side, you've probably seen this with a lot of popular kids when you were young. The popular kids, they just seem to get more and more popular because they act as a popular kid. Everyone around them, especially when people are first meeting each other, they're like, oh, he seems cool. He seems popular. He probably is cool and popular. Let me follow him around. Oh, other people are looking at you follow him. They think, oh, this guy's got a few followers. He probably is popular. Let me follow him too. And then that cycle perpetuates itself. In both ways, again, this is one we like it's a chicken or an egg problem. But here is my claim. I postulate to you that actually it's mental health first. Mental health is how you break that cycle. If you're in a death spiral like I was, mental health is how you break that spiral. Start with mental health. And don't worry, throughout this lecture, I'll be giving you little pieces of mini homework so that you can follow along. So that begins by pursuing the right activities. What do I mean by that? For me, a big part of why I was able to break free was because of a break between high school and university. And again, I've told this story before. Apologies if you've... Actually, I don't apologize. You need to hear this again. There's a break between the end of high school. So here in Sydney, Australia, we have what's called the HSC, the high school... I think the C stands for certificate. We have the high school certificate exam. And then depending on the results of that exam, you get admitted to the university of your choice. So between the end of HSC and the start of uni, there's about a 5-month break. Those 5 months, back then I thought, oh, this is shit. It's 5 months of me being lonely, 5 months of me watching other people on Facebook, 5 months of me watching other people and having the time of their life, posting it all over social media. And here I am, it's 5 months of me being lonely. But in hindsight, those were actually the best 5 months of my development journey because I needed that break. I needed a break in that circuit because, like I said earlier, I believe I'm shit. People reinforce that belief, strengthening my belief that I'm shit. More people reinforce that belief. So on and so forth. But those 5 months, I did not have a constant reinforcement of people telling me, hey, you're a piece of shit. Hey, you're a social punching bag. Hey, stay down where you belong. I didn't have that for 5 months. And that, it didn't trigger an immediate change, but I could feel that something was different. In my first week of university, All right, keep in mind that I had no training, so to speak. I had no practice of social skills. This was just going end of high school, 5 months of doing nothing, start of uni. So I was awkward as fuck. Didn't know how to speak. But even so, I felt that there was a change. There was something different, something fundamentally different. And that difference was nobody bullied me. For the first time in my life, nobody bullied me, or nobody defaulted to bullying me. And that's the key part, defaulted to bullying me. Because in high school, pretty much, unless they were a loner themselves or they were like socially awkward, a social turtle themselves, basically every time someone would walk near me, walk by me, I would basically tense up. I would basically just stop bracing myself for a verbal barrage. It's like, oh, what a loser. Those kind of comments. I don't remember exactly what they said, but they wouldn't have said something so direct because that would be punishable. They would say things that would make me feel bad without being directly punishable, if that makes sense. Yeah, you guys can tell I'm getting a bit flustered just remembering all of this stuff. Give me a moment. So, then when I started uni, nobody defaulted to punching me down. Nobody defaulted to giving me shit. Nobody defaulted to making me the social punching bag. And thanks for the supportive comments, guys. Really appreciate it. But even so, every time I met someone new, it's like, hey, nice to meet you, and introduce myself, I would just instinctively have a little bit of a flinch, just in case they wanted to, for whatever reason, bully me. But they didn't. That felt seriously really, really weird and really, really not right, because for the past 18 years of my life, I had become accustomed to being that social punching bag. I had become accustomed to basically being at the very bottom of that social hierarchy. And yet here I am, everyone treating me as an equal, with respect. Honestly felt really, really weird. But those 5 months were really, really great, because it allowed me to actually realize that, hold on, so it basically allowed me to take note, I forgot the proper word, basically just stop, pause, think, and go, what's happening? What's happening? Because without those 5 months, I reckon, I would have been just super clueless, I would have been fumbling around, and then people would have quickly picked up on it, and people would start bullying me again. But those 5 months, and we'll talk about meditation and journaling later, but those 5 months kind of acted like meditation without actively being meditation. Basically allowed me to think about my past interactions, the past 18 years of my life, what they meant, why things happened the way they did. And so from there, I did a lot, and I mean a lot of reading, watching videos, studying, anything I could get my hands on to basically understand human psychology, to basically understand why we do things. And this is not just limited to social skills, but it's really everything that we do as humans, everything we do as people. And I haven't stopped that. I am still learning a lot of things about humans as a whole, and I'm still learning a lot about me as a person. We won't talk about it today because it's not really relevant to social skills, but we'll talk about my approach a later time. We'll talk about my approach on money and why I'm not really chasing money anymore. 5 years ago, when I first started working, I was all about that money. I was all about saying, oh, how can I increase my salary a little bit more, a little bit more. I would basically stay at work, not leaving work, putting in those extra hours, hoping someone would take notice. Like, hey, look at me. I'm working 10 hours. I'm working 12 hours today. I'm doing a lot of work. Please notice me. Please give me a promotion. Now I'm the opposite. Like, it would be, I wouldn't do things for free, but at the same time, I'm not going to be working my ass off 80 hours a week. 80 hours exaggerating, 60 hours a week. I'm not going to be working my ass off 60 hours a week to make my boss richer. Well, my boss's boss's boss richer. Instead, I'm going to be doing what I need to do, what they pay me to do. That's not to say I won't go above and beyond when required, when it's busy. It just means that I have other priorities in life. Anyways, back to this. The last point is get help. Now, mental health is, I've already said a lot of this earlier, but mental health is extremely, extremely important. It is the very foundation on which all of the rest of your life is built on. Without a strong mental health, you might end up like that person at EY who basically decided, nah, fuck it, I'm ending my life. This stress is getting to me too much. And it's not just this person at EY as well. If you're around the Sydney area, like I am, this GP, general practitioner, this doctor, also ended up taking her life. She was a mum as well. Just basically one day decided, nah, don't want to do this anymore. And doctors they get paid a lot of money, we would think, right? But even so, and so we would think, oh, lots of money, very successful. Doctors are successful. They would be great. But even so, with this supposed success that she had, she still decided to off herself, leaving behind a husband and kids. Get help. Now, I do offer, so this is a bit of a self-plug, I do offer coaching as well. I have a link. I'll put the link down somewhere else, maybe at the end of the stream. And you can pay me if you want. You can also not pay me if you want. So twice a month, I go through those submissions and I give someone free coaching. That's it. Free. Absolutely free. Put down your story, put down your details and stuff. If your story is compelling, I'll help you for free. No strings attached. That's it. But of course, if you want to jump the queue, you got to pay for that. Okay, next slide. So, your homework. Basically what I just said, but now in words. Your self-esteem, like mine, probably is in the trash. That's why you're on self-improvement. Your self-esteem is probably in the trash. So, your homework is to remove absolutely anything that destroys your self-esteem. Now, I know that's a lot easier said than done. Some things is very hard to avoid. For example, for me, back when I was in high school, I could not really avoid my bullies. A lot of them were in my class. A lot of them did the same activities that I did. I can't exactly just remove it. I can't just delete them. But what I could do, and what I did, was try to avoid them. Because I knew that being around them made me feel like shit. And part of me wanted to do the opposite, and sometimes did. Basically, I would actively try to seek them out, trying to test my own resilience. But in my experience, and it could be different for you, and I hope it is different for you, but in my experience, being in situations or around the people that make you feel like shit, generally speaking, they generally won't help. If you are near the top of breaking through, so if this is like the barrier of bad self-esteem up down here, good self-esteem up here. If you need the barrier, if you're just about to poke through, maybe you can go and test it. But if you were down in the depths like me, you're better off avoiding it. To begin with, right? To begin with. Hopefully, the idea is your self-improvement, your mental health gets better and better with time, and then you could start trying to test the waters, start trying to break through that barrier. And hopefully, eventually, you will. But for now, if your self-esteem is in the gutter, is in the trash, remove anything that keeps it down there. Give it the loving that it so desperately needs. Now, I know most of the audience here are young men. I know I've got one girl in the audience, at least one girl, but most here are young men. And for young men especially, it seems gay. It's like, oh, what? You trying to love yourself? That's gay, bro. That's gay. No, loving yourself is not gay. Taking care of yourself is not gay. Prioritizing your own health, mental, physical, whatever, that's not gay. It's not weak. It's what's required. You need strong health. You need to do this both for yourself and for the people in your life. Imagine you had weak mental health. Some of you probably do, like I did. But imagine it got to a point where, like me, you were dreaming of suicide every night. And one day you actually did do it. At that point, do you think any of those people would be calling you gay? Would be calling you weak? No. They probably hope that they could take their words back and go, yeah, no, I was, I was, I was, sorry, bro. I was kidding. Don't take it so seriously. Don't kill yourself. They might pass it off like that. But at the end of the day, nobody is going to be happier if you left the world, especially your parents and your friends and loved ones. That's why you need to start loving yourself. Give yourself permission to love yourself. I like using that phrase a lot. Give yourself permission to do something, right? Usually it's give yourself permission to suck. Start doing something. You're going to be shit at it to begin with, but start by giving yourself permission to suck. Here, it's start by giving yourself permission to take care of yourself. And that last point, God's gift. The human mind is extremely, extremely powerful. It can end up fooling itself. You've probably seen, maybe you have, maybe you haven't, you've probably seen various studies where it's kind of like the placebo effect, or maybe the nocebo effect, where basically, if you believe something strongly enough, and obviously within the realms of possibility, for example, if I believe I can fly, I can't actually fly. If I jump off, I won't. But if I jump out the window, I'll probably go splat. But if I believe that I am a social butterfly, that is within the realms of possibility, I will be a social butterfly, or at least I'll be more inclined to be a social butterfly. You've probably also seen certain studies, I don't know if they're actually studies or if they're just more observational studies, where cancer patients or people who are very, very ill, they're told that, hey, there's this new experimental treatment. If you take it, you will be cured. And of course, this experimental treatment could be nothing. And maybe I'm just making up a story now, but hopefully it illustrates the point that those people who actually believe they were cured, they became cured. Not 100%, but because of that belief that, hey, I'm all right, I'm not sick, I'm okay. They actually being all right, not sick, and they end up being okay. Belief is extremely powerful. And so the last dot point, God's gift, is basically, I want you to basically brainwash yourself, trick yourself, fool yourself, whatever yourself, into believing you are God's gift to the entire world. That you deserve all of the world's praise to be heaped upon you. You deserve every single good thing that happens to you. You deserve the love, the respect, everything that your heart so desperately desires. You are God's gift, and therefore you deserve it. I don't care what it takes for you to do it. I don't care if it's like chanting or having positive affirmations in the morning or paying someone to read these words out to you. Whatever it takes, end up believing that you are God's gift. I believe I am God's gift. Not literally, but I have that mindset. I have that mentality. I have that approach to life where everyone, and this is actually this is actually one of the mantras that I live by, one of the codes that I live by, that everyone should be better off because they met me. That if I am in someone's life, they should be better off because they have met me. Nobody should be worse off because I am in their life. Because I am God's gift. That's the approach you should take too. Make that reality. Okay, now that we have that massive side tangent, it's not a side tangent, but it feels like it's irrelevant, right? It's like lecture about social skills, and here we've spent what? We spent 45 minutes talking about mental health. Now we start talking about social skills. Okay, let's talk about frame. A lot of you might be familiar with the idea of frame already, but if you're not, frame is like the battle between your set of beliefs and someone else's set of beliefs. Here's what I mean. Let's say I'm having Let's say I'm about to go for a job interview. What kind of demeanor, what kind of approach do you think someone who's about to go for a job interview might have? They're probably thinking, I hope I get this job. I'm really, really nervous. I'm sweating like me right now. But if they're just going out and meeting a friend, or if they think that, hey, the other person that the other stranger at the end of the room, they require their help. All of a sudden, the demeanor, the approach switches around. Oh, you need my help, do you? What do you have to offer me? That's the kind of approach, that's the kind of frame, the mindset that I'm talking about here. So, in that case, in the example of an interview, most interviews go like this. The interviewer, or the interviewers, sometimes there's multiple, sit at the end of one desk, or if it's online, they go through Zoom or Teams or whatever you have you, and they are the ones asking the questions. And the person going for the interview, going for that job interview, the interviewee, they're the ones sitting there meekly answering the questions. Oh, tell me about yourself. Oh, hi. My name is XYZ. I have 5 years experience doing this. I have 10 years experience doing that. My hobbies are playing guitar. Is that okay? Cool. Tell me about a time where you went above and beyond. This time at this company, I worked like 12 hours a night and I got the project over the line. You see that difference there? One person or one group of people, the interviewers, they're in charge. And the other person, the interviewee, he is the one falling into their frame. The interviewers are the one that set the tone. They control the pace of the conversation. They essentially control the entire interaction because one person falls into the other person's frame. Now, what if you take a different approach? Let's say I'm going for that same job interview, but in the back of my mind, I know that I am God's gift. I know that any company would be lucky to have me. How would I approach that? They would, of course, start by asking me questions. Tell me about yourself. But instead of being all flustered, I'll just go through the key points. Hi, my name is XYZ. I have these experiences. Done. That is somewhat unexpected because usually from the interviewer's point of view, they expect you to bend over backwards and go, oh, here are my socials. Here's my qualifications. Here's this, here's that. And then halfway through, you would flip the script and you would ask them their points of view. So, tell me about the time you went above and beyond. Okay, one time I did this for this project. It was very grueling. I worked out a key way to make it faster. I executed. What about you? Am I expected to go above and beyond constantly at this company? Now, that seems a bit of a stupid question to ask. It's like, huh? You want to slack off all the time? No. Rather, you take the approach that you know your own value. You know that you can get things done very effectively, very efficiently. Why would you have to spend 60 hours, 80 hours a week at work? You wouldn't. You are now interviewing for the best job, the one that pays the highest salary, the one that has the best work conditions. So instead of you desperately, oh, I really need this job. I hope I pass. I hope I get this job. Instead of you desperately needing this job, now it's the company that desperately needs you. That is what this whole frame is about. Now, I've got my first dot point there as the Matrix analogy. You guys are familiar with the Matrix? It's a fairly old movie now, but a lot of you probably have seen or heard of the blue pill / red pill analogy. And no, I'm not talking about the actual red pill. I'll talk about that later. I'm not talking about the red pill where, oh, do these to get women, blah, blah, blah. I'm simply talking about having the veil lifted, seeing the truth, seeing the unwritten rules, the code that runs the world. Once you understand this idea of frame, a lot of people would be, oh, this is amazing. This is a great piece of news. I understand frame. I can do everything with frame. And they would try to go and overdo it. Oh, frame. Oh, when he said that he likes chicken, what did he mean by that? They try to overanalyze every single last point to the point that they just become, they try to analyze things that aren't there. They go overboard. But like I said at the beginning, this will be one of those mistakes that you will have to make yourself. You will have to go a little too far before you know where the sweet spot was. If you never make that journey beyond the sweet spot, you never know where the sweet spot is. This is one of those mistakes, one of those things that you will have to learn and do yourself. Now, next dot point, exchange of imperfect information. This doesn't strictly fall under the idea of frame, but I'm still going to put it here because this applies to absolutely everything. Right now, why are you listening to me? Think about that. Why are you listening to me? What qualifications do I have? I mean, I said a few things at the start, but how can you verify that those are true? You probably clicked on the link in the in the lecture details tab. And you say, oh, cool, someone's hosting a lecture. They've got Adonis. Let me click on them. They probably know what they're doing because they're Adonis. Am I right? If this was, say, your baby brother, baby sister, making this live stream right now, would you care? Probably not. So why do you care that it's me? Who am I? I'm just, unless you know me personally, who am I to you? I'm just another stranger. And yet you value my words. Why is that? Because frame, right? Exchange of imperfect information. What do I mean by that? A lot of things give signals. A lot of things give the idea or the impression of a certain thing without actually it being true. What does that mean? For example, if someone is driving a Lamborghini and they step out, they're wearing a very, very nice fancy suit, very well tailored to their body. They're wearing nice shiny loafers. What do you immediately think of that person? They must be rich, right? Immediately you would think, oh, that person is rich. That's how they can afford the Lamborghini. That's how they can afford the well-tailored suit. Does that actually mean they are rich? Most of the time, yeah, probably. That's how they can get it. But actually, you can rent a Lamborghini for a day, for a photo shoot, for a nice drive around town. You can rent a suit, and actually getting an existing suit tailored, it's a lot cheaper than buying a brand new suit. And usually getting that cheap suit and having it well tailored looks way better than having an expensive suit that doesn't fit you. Meaning you can get that look, that step out of the Lamborghini in a nice dress suit. You can get that look for not much money. It's still money, but not much of it. Compared to actually buying the suit and actually buying the car. Another example. Let's say when you communicate. When I'm communicating to you right now, the way that I carry myself, the way that I speak, the way that I'm able to have all of these different voices. Have you noticed that? That I am able to talk in a certain way, and then when I give my examples, I can raise my voice, I can lower my voice, I can increase my pitch, decrease my pitch, my cadence, all of that. Me being able to do that should convey, doesn't mean I actually know how to do this, but should convey that I am well versed in social interactions. Again, frame is an exchange of imperfect information. It's what you're signaling to the other person. You don't necessarily have to be, it doesn't necessarily have to be true as long as you signal it and they buy that signal. For example, in the pickup community, there's this idea of peacocking. Right? If you don't know, peacocking is when you wear something that's very bright, very loud. So let's say you're wearing a pink suit, or you're wearing like a funky hat, a tall hat. That's very, very attention grabbing. Hence the word peacocking, because peacocks, to mate, they display their beautiful feathers. The idea is, I have so much, I'm so abundant in resources that I can invest my excess resources to developing these beautiful feathers that serve absolutely no purpose whatsoever, other than to signal that I have excess resources. That's the idea of peacocking. In the pickup community, the idea changes a little bit in that peacocking shows that you're confident, because only confident people would wear such a loud piece of clothing. That's the idea. And then people on the sidelines, they see, oh, he's wearing a pink suit. Looks very stupid, but he's wearing it anyways. He must be hot shit. He must be very, very confident. Otherwise, he wouldn't wear it, would he? Well, guess what? Everybody starts somewhere. So that person who's peacocking for the very first time, he's definitely not confident. And yet, so many people, just by looking at him, will assume that he's confident. And of course, there are like, shit tests and whatnot, and we won't go into much detail about those. But right now, by merely wearing a certain piece of clothing, you give the impression that you are a certain type of person. And it's not just what you wear, but also how you communicate, how you posture yourself. And we'll talk about these tips towards the end. But for example, right now, if I talk fast, so if I'm talking really, really fast, it feels like I'm trying to get all my words in before you cut me off. Feels like I'm trying to get all my words in before you cut me off. That usually conveys that I don't believe that my words, listen to this carefully, I don't believe that my words are worthy of being heard. Rather, the opposite. I know this is a live stream, so there's no one interrupting me and I'm just talking to the camera. But a lot of times, if I'm, let's say, in a voice chat, right, I hop into plenty of voice chats. If I just wait for people to stop talking and then I start talking, and if someone's decide to cut me off, I don't, oh, hey, you shut up, I'm talking here. I don't do that. I wait my turn again. Or if there's just a very quick quibble, they had like a very quick half a second interruption, I would continue talking as if nothing happened, because my words, I believe, are worthy of being heard. People should shut their mouth to listen to what I have to say. I will act that way, and naturally, people will respond as if my words are made of gold. Again, this goes all back to belief and frame. If you act a certain way, people will believe that you deserve to act a certain way. Frame, next point. Frame is easy to set, hard to change. Imagine your relationship right now with your parents. What sort of dynamic do you have? Think about it. What sort of dynamic do you have with your parents? More likely than not, especially if you're young, your parents set the stage. Your parents dictate what you have to do, what should be done. They are the leader. And for good reason. They're the adults. You're the kid. If you try to say, hey, mum, I believe that I should have whey protein because it'll help me grow my muscles. And your mum says, no, whey protein is unnecessary. You will have my home-cooked meal and that's the end of it. Is she open to buying you whey protein? No, absolutely not. Can you convince her to buy you whey protein? Yes, but it will be a very difficult journey. Now imagine the opposite. Not the opposite, but imagine a different scenario where a doctor comes in and says, I believe your son should be prescribed some whey protein. Now, obviously, whey protein is not a medical prescription, but for the sake of argument, let's say it is. The doctor says, I believe your son requires whey protein. Otherwise, he'll die. What's your mum going to do? Your mum's probably going to immediately go out and say, oh, which brand of whey protein is best to buy? Yeah, she'll buy you that if she loves you enough. Hopefully she does. So what's different between those two scenarios? One is you're her kid, and the other one is it's a doctor. Damn doctor. Now, what if a few years later you grow up and you become a doctor yourself? And then you tell your mum, hey mum, I need whey protein. Hopefully by the time you're a doctor, you should be able to buy yourself some whey protein, but let's say you need your mum's permission. Your mum would probably still say no, because in her mind, this whole time, you are her little baby. Even if you're grown up super tall, like right now, I'm 27, I'm still living at home, my mum still treats me like her little baby. Because all my life, I've been her little baby. Even though literally now I literally tower over her. I'm a giant standing next to her. Ever so slowly, that perception is starting to change. But a lot of times, by default, she still sees me as her little baby. Not as much as before, because now I am able to convey my thoughts, convey my arguments in a strong, logical way. Whereas previously, I would have been flustered. But, Mom, no, you're wrong, Mom. No, listen to me. The YouTuber said I need protein. I would have been flustered. I would not have been logical. Now, I don't get flustered. And we'll talk about emotional control at a later point. But having that ability to control your emotions, especially in the face of people who challenge your frame, such as your parents, such as your friends, being able to control your emotions is a massive, massive tool, a very powerful tool in order to convince them to change their perception on you. And that's what I mean. It's very difficult to change someone's perception of you once they already have it. So imagine, let's talk about my bullying story again. Imagine I was bullied a lot, and then one day I decided I've had enough of it. I'm super confident I am God's gift. Even if I believe it, and even if I act it, to a lot of my bullies, they would go, yeah, right. What a loser. What a poser. That's fake. And they would try to test my frame. They won't believe that I'm God's gift, especially not overnight. And they would be, especially maybe even going harder with their bullying. They would bully me twice as hard, 3 times as hard to try to crack my frame. Because they have already this perception that I am a social punching bag. It's very hard to change someone's perspective. And in a way, that's why those 5 months at the start were very important to me. Because that time allowed people's perception of me to change. And more importantly, it allowed my own perception of myself to change. Frame works that way too. Your frame in regards to yourself. Do you believe that you're worthy of change? Do you believe that you're worthy of love? Do you believe that you're worthy of respect? The answers to those questions, it's very hard to change overnight. It takes time. It takes effort. It takes reference experiences, or reinforcing experiences, as I like to call them. You need reason to believe. Okay, belief is strong. Belief is powerful. I gave you the example earlier. If someone believes that they're cured of cancer, their body will fight and act as if it's cancer-free and fight off the disease. But belief becomes so much easier to implement if you actually have reference points, reference experiences to help amplify that belief. I'm very lucky. Luck and effort. But I'm very lucky that I've met my girlfriend. We've been dating for 5 years now, and especially at the start, she still dotes on me now, but I needed it at the start, where she would basically act as if I was God's gift to her. I am God's gift to her, but especially at the start, where she gave me all of her attention, she just doted on my every single word. That gave me a massive confidence boost that, hey, here's living evidence that I am God's gift. Of course I'm God's gift. Having that piece of reference material, that reference point, that reference experience reinforces the belief in my mind that I am God's gift. Of course, you can replace God's gift with whatever you want. I'm just using this as an example. I'm not saying to be extra cocky. I'm simply saying be confident. Okay, your homework regarding frame is to journal / meditate / think about your relationship with other people. I mentioned this earlier. Think about your relationship with your parents, with your friends at school, with your teachers. What kind of dynamic do you currently have? How did it become that way? That last question is important. How did it become that way? For me, what's my relationship with others back in school? I was the social punching bag. How did it become that way? After a long time of thinking, I believe that it was because of my grandma. She gave me those Buddhist values, which are great values for an adult, but not for a kid. I took those beliefs, those values, acted upon them in such a way that it made a lot of people dislike me. And of course, a 5-year-old wouldn't understand all this, and I don't blame my 5-year-old self, but that's why it happened. So with that in mind, now that I know the why, I can approach all future relationships, all future interactions with that lesson in mind. Will I be shoving my value down someone's throat again? No. Because that is what led me to become the social punching bag a few years ago. 2 decades ago now. That was my lesson. So for you, what is your relationship with your parents, with your friends at school, or if you're working, with your colleagues at work? Where do you fit in terms of the social hierarchy? Where do you fit in? Are you at the very top? Are you at the very bottom? Are you somewhere in between? How did it get there? Really, really think about this. And this piece of homework, I think, will take you many, many weeks to truly get to the bottom of it. Took me a long time of thinking to reach that conclusion. And that's not the only conclusion, but for the sake of time, we'll leave it like that. And then lastly, what is your default? What do I mean by that? In my high school years, whenever I met someone new, right? This is like, let's say, going to a school excursion, going to a new place, going anywhere, whenever I met someone new, my default reaction is to expect them to bully me, is to expect them to treat me like their personal little punching bag. That was my default. What is your default? How did you get there? Ask yourself these questions. Next, and this is going to be a very short slide, but it has to be said because there are a lot of people who are really, really socially uncalibrated. You have to read the room. You have to read the person. What do I mean by that? Read the room. Read the person. There's a difference between a girl who is politely rejecting you and a girl who is giving you some hints. For people who don't know the difference, it can be really hard to tell the difference, right? They simply don't know the difference. They've never had that experience before. So they might interpret a polite rejection as them leading you on. For example, a girl might say, sorry, I'm not in the right space for a relationship right now. It's not the right time. Someone might interpret that as, oh, not right now. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe next week. I'll keep asking her. Hey, you want to date me now? No? Oh, next week. You want to date me now? No? Next year. You want to date me now? They took that initial no as maybe ask me later. Maybe. On the flip side, someone who is playing hard to get versus someone who is outright saying no. Both start with no, right? Bill Burr, the comedian, has a great joke. Forget half of it, but the crux of it is you can take the same words, the same set of words, But if you say them differently, they can have an entirely different set of meanings. For example, oh my god, no, stop it. You're so bad. Oh, no. Oh, you naughty, no. Versus, no, stop it. That's bad. You're very naughty. Stop it. No. Same words, very, very different meanings. And someone who's lacking that social calibration might find it very difficult to tell the difference between the two. So, how do you do it? How do you get better at this? And I know this does not apply to all of you, but there's enough people in the world that are socially uncalibrated that this has to be said. 2 ways. One is in person. Simply observe in person what happens. Now, that itself happens in 2 ways. One is you can observe the interactions of other people. You can be, sitting, especially in the school environment where you are surrounded by social interactions everywhere. You can take a quiet approach, sit down, sit at the back, just sit somewhere nearby, and observe what 2 people are doing and the words that they say. Observe enough of those interactions and you will get a good idea, a rough idea of when someone says this, they mean that. The second way of in-person is simply do it yourself. Approach the girl. Approach the random stranger. Approach whoever. Approach. This is going to be very tough, especially when starting out. You're going to be like, hi, I think you're very pretty. Can I get your number? That's going to be your first approach. And hopefully I've demonstrated that that was not a very successful approach. The girl very likely would go, what the fuck was that? Get away from me, you creep. You weirdo. And very well, you might deserve it because you were socially uncalibrated. But through that one interaction, through that one very small and potentially humiliating interaction, you will learn a lot. You will learn that, hey, when I act very, very unconfident, when I'm stuttering and tripping all over my words, girls don't like that. If I'm running up to them very sweaty, girls don't like that. If I approach them from behind and I tap them on the shoulder and I scare them, girls don't like that. By doing these approaches over and over and over and over and over and over again, you will learn a lot of lessons that you don't even realize that you're learning. These are just, there's a word for this, I forget it, but basically you can't just know it inside, you can't put it into words. You just know it when you see it or when you feel it or when you hear it, but there's no way you can put it into words. You'll get that. And the second way is coaching. Again, this will be a quick plug. You can apply for coaching with me. But it doesn't have to be with me. It doesn't have to be paid coaching either. It doesn't have to be coaching for you. What do I mean by that? You can watch the coaching reels, the coaching tapes, or the coaching videos of other people who paid for coaching. A lot of these dating gurus, dating coaches, they often post the clips of their students. And then they'll break it down. It's like, oh, you did this when talking to the girl. This was great, but you should have done XYZ instead. Or no, that approach wasn't great because of such and such reasons. I also learned a lot. And remember, back then I said I did a lot of reading and I did a lot of watching on how social interactions work, how human psychology works. And I watched a lot of videos of these so-called in-field breakdowns where a student would go, hey, here's my approach. Can you break this down for me? Can you tell me what I did good, what I did poorly? Sorry. And you can do a lot of that. And that's free, absolutely free. Obviously, it won't be tailored to you because it's not your own approach. It's not your own interaction, it's someone else's. But you can still learn plenty from that. Okay, next. Top 10 tips to be social, 111. Now we finally get to it. Remember at the start I talked about chicken and the egg. Well, this is whatever comes after. First is mental health. Without having a solid foundation of mental health, you're not going to be able to develop any strong set of social skills. Now, if you can see on the screen, I don't know if I made it too small, I wrote the mountains are mountains, rivers are rivers. What does that mean? Does anyone know that Buddhist, or I think it's Buddhist, maybe it's some kind of monk thing. Does anyone know that monk saying? Put in the chat if you know what I'm talking about. No one seems to know. That's all right. Okay. Again, like I said, it's the chicken or the egg. What comes first, mental health or social skills? Mental health, social skills. Good mental health reinforces good social skills, which then reinforces good mental health, which then reinforces good social skills, so on and so forth. Now, if you have a great understanding, so if you've already made that journey and you went a little too far and now you're coming back, none of these tips are necessarily needed. You don't need any of these tips because they're all ingrained. They're all already in your head. This is just knowledge that you just kind of already know. But the saying goes like this. Right? You have to go too far to understand the big picture and then you can come back. In preparing for this lecture, I had this great analogy, but now I've forgot it because I didn't write it down. Anyways, this monk or this meditation quote. Before I sought enlightenment, mountains were mountains and rivers were rivers. Whilst I was seeking enlightenment, mountains were no longer mountains, rivers were no longer rivers. After reaching enlightenment, mountains are mountains and rivers are rivers again. What does that quote mean? That means at the start, before you're aware of any of these social interaction cues and all these frames and all these interactions and all of this random stuff, you're just like, whatever, I'm just talking to someone. Who cares? That's it. There was no breakdown. There was no talk of frames. There was nothing. And then you get really interested and you start having that veil unlifted. You start to see the social cues. You start to see the interactions and why people respond certain ways. And as that veil gets unlifted, all of a sudden, you're seeing the world in a different light. You're seeing those social interactions in a different way. In the same way, mountains were no longer mountains. Rivers were no longer rivers. They had deeper meanings behind them. And then after you go through the entire journey, after you understand it all, you can take a step back and see it for the beauty that it is. That, hey, that mountain, still a mountain. That river over there, still a river. I now understand what makes it a mountain. I understand why it's a river, but a mountain's still a mountain, a river still a river. So in the same way, these top 10 tips to be social, or top 5 tips for big charisma, or top 7 tips for interviews, whatever these top X tips for certain things, none of this is actually needed if you have the foundation. But still, it bears repeating. It's kind of like when you're, I forget the name of the game, but basically you start by exploring the map and you don't know where anything is, and you try to get your bearings by like exploring parts and parts of the map before you can see the entire map. So here, each one of these dot points, and here these are just 5 dot points in no specific order. There's 1,000 different tips you can have for great for great social skills. Excuse me. But until you can see the whole map and see how different things link together, each one of these is kind of like self-improvement. I said at the start, self-improvement is not individual silos, it's one big umbrella that covers everything. In the same way, each one of these tips is just tips. They don't make or break anything. The fundamental, the foundation is still your mental health. With that said, let's talk about it. First is thoughts and vibes. What does that mean? This is kind of harking back to what you believe. Remember earlier I made this example, this analogy of me being God's gift. If I think, having these positive thoughts, these vibes, that hey, I am social. I tell myself before going anywhere, I am social. I tell myself I am having fun. It's just like those cancer patients telling themselves they're cured of cancer. If I tell myself I'm social, I'm having fun, I am a great person. With those thoughts in mind, with that mini brainwashing in place, if I go and talk to someone, I will be social. I will be great. It is all mental. That's why mental health is number one. It's all mental. Your belief. I had another great point here, but I forgot what it was. Anyways, next point. So, alcohol as a social lubricant. If you are of drinking age, and I know a lot of you aren't, but a lot of you are as well, alcohol is a social lubricant. That's why a lot of work functions at a lot of parties, there's usually some alcohol being served. All right, whether it's beer or wine or spirits or anything in between, alcohol is usually there as a social lubricant. When people drink alcohol, they get, apart from being intoxicated, they also have their inhibitions lowered. So they are now more open to doing certain things. Let's say before you weren't open to, I don't know, eating this new food, this gross, disgusting smelling kind of food. Let's say blue cheese or durian. But now with a bit of alcohol in you, it's, what the hell, who cares? Everyone else is doing it, I might as well do it. So you try it. Alcohol is great as a social lubricant because it lowers your inhibitions. So, does that mean you need alcohol? Obvious answer. Obvious question requires an obvious answer. And the obvious answer is no, you don't require alcohol. You don't need alcohol. And the reason this is not its own point, but rather as a sub point, is because if you believe that you're drunk, I know, right? You can't really believe that you're drunk, but if you believe that you're drunk, you will act as if you have alcohol in your system and your inhibitions will be lowered and you will be more social. Especially in a loud environment, like let's say at a party or at a work function where there's music blaring and a lot of people chattering around. Everyone else, 99% of the crowd, is already drinking. They already have alcohol in them. They already have this vibe going. If you just blend in with the vibe, even though you have no alcohol in you, you will act as if you have alcohol. But of course, you have to allow yourself to believe that in the first place. Because a lot of people, myself included, when I first started experimenting with all of this, I would just go, oh, I'm not drinking alcohol. Sorry, I'm being weird. I'm not drinking I'm not blending into the vibe. I am sticking out like a sore thumb. You need to blend in. You need to believe in your mind that you are having alcohol. Maybe that was phrased a little bit poorly, but essentially, what you believe ends up being true. Now, this is not some voodoo, magic, fake science kind of thing. I am a man of science. I strongly believe in science. And the things that I say, whilst I don't have any, studies here to quote to you, these are all things that are backed by science. This law of manifestation, this law of attraction thing, not really. Actually, let's briefly talk about that. People say the law of attraction. If you believe something, if you think about it enough, the universe manifests it into existence for you. Not really. There's an easy way to explain that, and that is, if you believe something enough, you will end up taking the actions of someone who does. What do I mean by that? Let's say I want to manifest a beautiful. Let's say I want a beautiful girlfriend. Right? Let's say I'm single right now and I want a beautiful girlfriend. If my mind is focused on beautiful woman, beautiful woman, beautiful woman, I will be more aware of every single beautiful woman around me, simply because I'm thinking about it all the damn time. And at the same time, because I believe that I deserve beautiful women, I will approach beautiful women with that belief. I will talk to women with a lot more confidence, simply because I'm thinking about it. That's it. There's no magical, if you think about it enough, something will come up. Yes, but no. Anyways, next up point is talking about voice. You've probably heard this tip before. Speak with a downward inflection. Downward. Not neutral, not upward, downward. Speaking with a downward inflection gives your voice a lot more authority. It's not just for men, it's for women as well. Imagine when your mum is really, really angry at you. She's yelling at you. What have you done? Not what have you done? What have you done? Downward. Authority. Giving your voice a downward inflection at the end. I'm exaggerating. But putting that downward inflection at the end gives your voice a lot more authority, even if you're saying the exact same words. Downward inflection. Remember that. Oh, I wrote an extra point here. I see a lot of people breaking down when their frame is challenged. So let's go back to frame. Remember how with frame, excuse me, I've been talking for like what, 1.5 hours. Voice is getting sore. With frame, a lot of times it is belief and it's not actually true. Meaning I could believe that I am God's gift to the world without it being true that I am God's gift. I am not factually God's gift to the world, even if I try to believe that I am. So when two frames clash, when two frames collide, there is a battle of frames. So what do I mean by that? Let's say you believe that you're God's gift. Someone else also believes that they are God's gift. There can only be one gift. Which one is it? Is it you or is it him? And so when you interact with that other person, whether that other person is a man or a woman, boy or a girl, whatever, there will be a clash because now there is a, what's the word? Not a paradox, an inconsistency. On the one hand, you're the gift. On the other hand, they're the gift. Which one is it? There will be a clash. And when those frames clash, I see a lot of people break down in the frame and the first thing they do is have an upward inflection in their voice. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I got found out. And they'll try to soften things up, be apologetic, and have giggles. Downward inflection. Maintain that downward inflection. Next point is having polarity in your personality. What do I mean by that? Imagine the class clown. Right? Your school or your class probably has one. The funny kid. The guy who's always cracking jokes, always pulling pranks, always getting the teacher a bit angry and annoyed. The class clown. The guy who pulls pranks. Does anyone take him seriously? No one takes him seriously because he's always clowning around. On the other hand, someone who is goody two-shoes, plays everything by the rules, has a stick up their ass. Says, oh, you're not following the rules. Everyone takes him seriously, but they take him too seriously. Nobody likes him because he just has a stick up his ass. Not great. You want to be somewhere in between. You don't want to be in either extreme, you want to be somewhere in between. Something like an 80-20 rule. So what I found has worked for me, and it could be different for you, but what I found has worked for me is to be joking by default. And when I say joking, I'm not trying to joke to appease someone, but rather I'm joking for my own entertainment. There's a difference there. So I won't be making jokes as, you're fat, what a loser. But if someone is very, very clearly fat, and I know that they're okay with it, as in they're okay with jokes. First, I make sure I don't want to get fired or anything. I just know that they're a joking person. If they're a joking person, if I know that they can take jokes, and I see them eat a massive slice of cake, for example, I'm asking, going on a bulk, it looks like you need it. This is just an example off the top of my head. So it's not a great example. But in that example, I'm making that joke. It's very clearly a joke. And it is, yes, in a way, a slight dig at them. But it is not straight up an insult to their face. You're fat. You shouldn't be eating that. You fatty. You're going to die early. I'm not saying anything like that. Nothing of the kind. But even though I'm joking, my default is joking, I will be switching in between joking and seriousness. Joking and seriousness. And even like in this live stream right now, this lecture, you might have seen that already. Most of the time, I'm serious because now I'm delivering a lecture. I'm not talking to any of you, at least not face to face. I'm delivering a lecture. But even so, in between, I'll have moments where I'm just giggling to myself. I'm just have moments where I find something that I said very amusing. And because it's amusing, I'm going to laugh at it. Easy as pie. That's it. So have polarity in your personality. That way, it keeps everyone on their toes and make sure that you're not a boring person. Next one, an obvious one, assume the leader. Especially in interactions where everyone is brand new. So let's say you started a new company, you're starting at a new place, or you just joined a new school, or you joined a new club, or whatever, where you don't have any pre-existing relationships. Start by assuming the leadership position. Start by assuming that you are above them in the social hierarchy. And I know that doesn't sound very nice. It's, oh, what do you mean? That's a nice thing to do. That's okay. Start by assuming that you sit above them in terms of the social hierarchy. Here's you, here's them. It might be that someone actually does have a lot of leadership and they will have their true leader. Remember, you're kind of faking it, not really faking, but you're faking it. You're faking your leadership level to be here. Someone's true leadership level might be here. And eventually you'll be found out and their frame will be stronger than yours. But for the most part, especially these days where everyone's glued to their phones and everyone's having very minimal actual face-to-face social interactions, if you assume that leadership position, what's going to happen? People are going to default and listen to you as a leader. It's like, oh, he's acting like the leader. He knows what he's talking about. I don't. He probably does. And they'll follow your example. Emotional control. That's the next one. Talked about it before, but being able to control, first of all, being aware of your emotions and then being able to control your emotions is extremely powerful when it comes to frame control. So the example that I have is with my parents, with my dad specifically. He is very, very stoic. To a fault, really, but he exhibits in facially like no emotions. He doesn't have it. Everything's just straight to the point. Everything's just logical. There's no room for debate. I hate that about him, but I also respect that from him because he is always in control of every interaction. And even when I try to fight back with logic, his frame is rock solid. His frame is like, no, I'm the man of the house. We do things my way. But with my mum, she is an emotional mess. Her emotions are all over the place. She always has in arguments an appeal to emotion. Oh, but what about how I feel? Doesn't matter what you feel, matters what the outcome is. If you're able to temporarily temper your emotional control, you will achieve great results. Because, and here, not medication, meditation and journaling really help with this. You are able to realize and write down and think about, oh, in this situation, I acted this way. My emotions got riled up. People took advantage of that. People lost respect for me, etc., etc. Okay, almost done. Now, the homework is to actually be social. I've given you the foundational layer of how to be social. Your social skills, everything comes down to frame control and your own mental health. So here, let's do like a quick summary. A too long didn't watch. You can take these next 30 seconds. First, mental health, self-esteem. Develop a strong, impenetrable layer of self-esteem. You think you are God's gift. Next, frame control. Taking that super, super strong belief and putting it everywhere that you go. Every interaction that you have, you believe you are God's gift. I know that's a very blunt way of putting it. It's like it's a very blunt instrument. And of course, different interactions require different levels of finessing. But generally speaking, if you take, I believe I'm God's gift. I believe I'm super confident. I believe I deserve everyone's respect. I believe my words are worthy of being heard. And you take that and you apply it to every single conversation that you have. Amazing things will happen. It might be a bit weird at the start because you don't believe that you're God's gift. You don't have amazing self-esteem. Doesn't matter. act it out anyways. And here's a reward for you guys who are making it all the way to the end. One tip that I like to use, or one technique that I like to use, is what I call what would X do? Now, X could be whoever you like. X could be a role model, could be your mum, could be your dad, could be James Bond, it could be Doctor Who, it could be whatever. Someone that you would like to emulate, you ask yourself, what would that person do? And then you do that. Here's a great thought experiment. Imagine there was a clone of you, right? Here's you, and here's your clone. And then you take the world's most confident person, you take their brain, and you shove it into your clones. How would that person act? That person would act very differently to how you would act, because he or she would be very, very confident, very, very sure of themselves. They walk everywhere as if they belong there. They walk like they belong. They act like they belong. They act and talk and walk and do everything as if they deserve to. What does that tell you? That the only difference between you and your clone is in here. The mind. I'll say that again. The only difference between you and your clone is in your mind. There's nothing different about the two of you physically. They're your clone. And yet they are able to achieve much better results because they believe that they can and they took the appropriate actions. You can do the same thing too by first just deceiving yourself, just fooling yourself, brainwashing yourself into thinking, at least temporarily, that you deserve something like this. And proactive practice. Basically, approach. Wherever you think you suck, you have identified a weakness. It's just like going to the gym. Let's say you suck at the bench press. How do you fix that? Do more bench press. You suck at social interactions. How do you fix that? Practice interacting socially. One thing that I used to do back in uni to basically get me out of my shell and just to prove myself that I won't die if I do this is I would approach people just randomly with one rule. And the rule is I could not say anything for the first 15 seconds. And eventually I bumped that up to 30 seconds in a minute. That was the rule. That's it. I could do anything else. I could put my hand up. I can wave at them. I can dance in front of them. I could smile. I could frown. I could maybe don't pull your fists up because that could get you into trouble. You could do whatever you want. You just couldn't talk for 15 seconds. A lot of people thought that was weird. It's like, he's a bit weird. He might be a bit cooked. But some people, they really leaned to it and they played around with it too. And they also started dancing. They also started waving and mirroring what I did. And then 15 seconds later, hey, how you doing? What's your name? My name is blah. And go on from there. And the last slide. Your homework is to, after every single interaction, every single one of them, reflect upon them. Doesn't have to be immediately because sometimes you're caught up in the moment, but later that day, you would journal about it. You write down, okay, today I approach this guy and we got along very well because XYZ. Here's what I notice about my frame. Here's what I notice about his frame. Here's what I notice about my body language. Here's what I notice about his body language. Write everything down. Because the more you put your awareness on it, the more easily you'll be aware of them in future interactions. And really, that's it. That's it from me today. Enjoy your homework. We're done.